all about finding the balance. I'm sure we must have heard this statement in different walks of our lives, in peer groups, our houses, and of course, in our team, when we're setting up email campaigns with content and images. If we were to think why it all lies in balance, it's because we care about our brand, customers, and the whole email experience. Welcome to the Zoho Campaigns Expert Diaries. I'm Aishwarya, your host, and I hope you're all doing well. With me today is someone who is a marketer, writer, email geek, teacher, and trust me, this list is long. Let's welcome Jason Rodriguez from Litmus. Jason believes in the balance I was talking about, and he really cares about helping marketers grow their skills and businesses. Hello, Jason. Glad to have you with us today.
Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Today is a little special because I'm hosting another podcaster. I know I missed this out from the introduction, but I really wanted to mention it here. So how is it to be on another podcast for a difference? And could you also share what made you start a podcast?
Yeah, it's fun. I love talking to other podcasters, and it's something I like that there's so many podcasts, especially now, related to email. So it's fun to talk to other email geeks about one of those topics that I love. Yeah, so I've been kind of on and off podcasting around email for a couple of years now. So back in, I want to say 2016, maybe. One of my colleagues, Kevin Mandeville, and I started a podcast called the Email Design Podcast, where we obviously talked about all things email design and development related. It was very code focused. So we ran that for a couple of years, got right up to almost 100 episodes recorded. We got up to 99 before he left Litmus, and we kind of went on hiatus. But then about a year or so ago, I decided to kind of revamp that podcast and rephrase it as the Delivering Podcast, which I've been doing for a little while now. A little bit slower cadence. We publish about every other week, depending on what's going on in our work and in the wider community. But it was really, when we started the Email Design Podcast, there weren't too many email related podcasts that we were able to find, at least, fill that gap and just talk about all the things we tended to care about and think about. We would discuss industry news. We would discuss tools. We would discuss different coding techniques that were kind of really quickly being. But over the years, it's been nice to see that we're not the only ones talking about email in the podcast space. So obviously, I've been listening to you, and I've seen a lot of kind of industry friends and stuff on your show. But there's a bunch of other podcasts on email too, which is awesome to see. So now it's just really fun to talk to other people about email, about marketing. The latest version of the Litmus podcast, Delivering, we've kind of expanded beyond just design and development, and have been talking about the wider email marketing landscape and strategy and leadership and tools and all that kind of stuff on top of the code related things too. So it's been really fun. I've gotten a lot of good conversations with people, met a lot of people through the podcast. And I feel like it's a great way to just, sit down with somebody and talk about email and everything email involves.
So true. And that's a wonderful journey. I liked how you were explaining about how you started with a specific concept and then moved on to revamp and totally include a lot of other topics about email marketing. I think I would agree with you on the fact that initially there were very minimal spaces or resources when it came to podcasts. I know the email community had a lot of resources online, but in terms of podcasts, I think there were not many podcasts. And great to know that most of us started this space to connect with other email geeks and sort of build relationships. And it's not just about one-off conversation as we were just talking. It's about getting to know them. So glad to know that this is happening, and so glad that we're doing the same thing right now. Times are changing and businesses are adopting different measuring standards when it comes to marketing efforts. So for the modern day email marketing, what are the 3 staple metrics you would say for measuring success?
Yeah, so I feel like traditionally people have focused on things like open rates and unsubscribe rates and bounce rates to, look at the health of their email marketing campaigns. But I feel like over the years I've been less interested in kind of basic metrics like that, and I feel like the things people should probably pay attention to now are a little bit more kind of higher level, like business type goals related to their email campaign. So looking at how many of your subscribers not only opened and clicked a link in your email, but then went through and did whatever specific action you were trying to get them to do, whether that's, buy something online or fill out a survey. But that conversion rate is going to be really important for people to look at to see whether or not their campaigns are actually effective and doing what they're meant to do, beyond just whether or not they were opened and somebody clicked a link. You want to see that your subscribers are completing that action and that conversion. Beyond that, open rate's nice for, just kind of general list health. Click rate is nice for just kind of general health, but I really think that click to open rate, which is looking at the number of clicks compared to the number of people that actually open your campaign, to see whether or not that content's really engaging. For a lot of marketers, it's something we've seen at Litmus. We do a lot of research, run a lot of surveys, thousands of email marketers, and try to understand, what their troubles are, what their challenges are. And one of the things we've seen is it seems like email marketing is under-resourced and underfunded, underinvested in by companies. And it's kind of, people think about like social being more important. They think about, native stuff being more important. But email tends to have the highest ROI of any marketing channel. So I think that's an important one too, is looking at the overall return on investment for your email campaigns. And if you can prove that your email campaigns are providing all that revenue that we know they're providing, if you can actually follow that through and prove the ROI of your email marketing, then that's a great way to get better resourcing and better investing from your bosses, from your stakeholders. So I would look at that as well. Beyond kind of those three, that conversion rate, the click to open rate, and ROI. One of the things we've seen and we've been really fortunate to use at Litmus is just it's not like a hard metric, but just looking at that kind of social buzz and what people are talking about when you actually send an email campaign. So we're fortunate in that we have a very vocal audience, that when we send an email, they're quick to tweet about it. They're quick to reply to our email campaigns and give us their thoughts on our emails. So that's been really, really valuable to see whether or not our email campaigns are really hitting the mark when it comes to design and copy and strategy. And it's been really valuable too, because anytime we mess up and send something like a broken link, or, the layout looks funky or whatever that happens to be, then they're really quick to point it out too. So we can, go in and make those fixes for the next campaigns too. So I think social buzz is kind of a great one for people to look at as well. And it's not a hard and fast metric. There's not like a direct number you can say, like, you could say like, oh, so many people tweeted about our email campaign. But it's really a quantity or a quality type thing as opposed to quantity. So if you can get good feedback on your emails directly from your subscribers and your audience, then that's perhaps the most important metric that you could be tracking these days.
Very true. For me to just summarize, of course, looking at conversion rate is important. And I think as we were just talking, the conversion rate differs from different brands. Like, some people, when they click a link and when they go purchase something that's on the store, that's a conversion for an e-commerce business. Whereas finishing up a survey is a conversion for another business. So yes, the action or the purpose behind the sending of the email is definitely a very good metric to track, apart from the usual or the conventional ones like opens or just stopping with clicks. And, you rightly said, associate the why. Like, why would somebody want to receive emails from you? When you associate that, I think the email ROI definitely matters. And I can't agree enough with you on the point that email is the best success channel that a business can use. In fact, our customers, when you ask them what would be the easiest channel for them to receive information from a brand, they put email in the top 2 channels when given about 8 channels to them to choose from. So I think email still, despite of the presence of a lot of other digital channels, it still goes on to be the most reliable and secure channel for customers. And in fact, it syncs in well with the other channels. As we were just talking about how somebody shares the email or the goodwill of a brand onto social media, it's because they are receiving emails from you, they feel connected with the email, and then they go on to share their positive reviews, or even they point out something that could be corrected as suggestions on social media. But the very first interaction happened as an email. Definitely, yes, these are new age metrics, and I hope the listeners today are keeping note of them to use them up for their efforts. Jason, moving on to the next discussion, I think we very well brought in social into our conversation today. That I'm framing another question around the same thing. With the use of so many digital channels, can you give marketers some more ways to combine their email marketing with other channels as well? So let me start with an example. Posting email newsletter archives on social media for more visibility. So do you have some hacks like that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely things you can do like that. Quick wins, easier things to do is you publish a newsletter and you can send that out to your social media channels or wherever that happens to be. I At this point, I feel like that's kind of table stakes. Like you should be doing that anyways because it just gets that content out in front of more people. Having things like sign up forms on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever that happens to be, is really for driving that list growth. One of the things that we really like and I would suggest doing is at Limis, we kind of have this motto of using email first in your marketing mix. So that's where I think like the magic kind of happens when you're tying email and these different channels together. So email has a lot of good things going for it. It's relatively cheap to produce and send email campaigns. It's one of the great things that you can test pretty much everything in an email campaign, and you can track how well those email campaigns and different tactics, different strategies, different copy, all of that stuff works pretty quickly. You can turn around emails relatively quickly. You can, send out an A/B test and do another one the following week. So the fact that you can track a lot of things and see how well an email's doing and these different strategies are doing, and then do it really, really quickly is a great way to test out different ideas. So use email first to test these different strategies, test different copy, graphics, calls to action, whatever that happens to be, to see what really resonates with your subscribers. And then take whatever you learn from that and push that to all these different channels. So I think it's less about directly integrating those, email with these other marketing channels, and more using email as a vehicle for understanding your subscribers and your audience, and then taking whatever you learn from email and then using that to inform all of your other marketing decisions across all those different channels. But you should be doing things like cross-posting your newsletter through to your social channels. And just that kind of content syndication is really important because not everybody's on your email list. Not everybody's, following you on LinkedIn or following you on Twitter. And the more channels you can hit with that kind of content, especially when you can get them tied back to that subscribe form and get them to sign up for an email newsletter, then the better off you're going to be.
Now we're all in the omni-channel environment, and when you see that our same subscribers are present across multiple other channels, I absolutely love the idea that you stated: email first and then move on to the next channels by taking the insights from email. Especially this might work wonders for omni-channel engagement, because you know that you've got solid insights by experimentation with email as a channel, and you can apply that across other channels because you know what strikes the best with your recipients when they're going to be across the other channels as well.
Yeah.
So that's a great point, Jason. So thank you so much for stating that.
Thanks.
And in fact, I have an interesting thing to share. So you were telling me about how to create sign-up forms and share that across social media. Interestingly, last week or so, I think we had the social media week or the social media day. And I saw that particular couple of days around that social media day or the week had a lot of people sharing their newsletters and their subscription forms on social media and saying, hey, guys, like subscribe to our newsletter here, and like here's an archive to look at our previous newsletters. So that way I felt it was good to see that brands are trying to establish a credibility with people, also trying to convert more people as subscribers, doing it in a much double opt-in way rather than just going around and adding
Yeah.
people directly to the list without their consent. It was so good to see that email marketers are taking that extra steps to go and actually present themselves to the followers on social media and saying, hey, if
Yeah.
you're interested, and then go ahead and subscribe to us. We're not forcing you, but here's a quick sneak peek for you to look at what we offer to you. So yeah, that was a
Yeah.
great point as well.
Good.
All right. Moving on to the next concept in our discussion, you're going to really enjoy this because I've personally known how much of an email accessibility champion you are. So I'm going to give you a very tough nut to crack. So you have to explain email accessibility to a non-designer. So how would you do it?
Sure. That is tough because a lot of accessibility comes from the code and development side in email. But when I think about accessibility, it's making sure that whatever content you have in an email, anybody can really understand it, whether or not they're, sight impaired, they have cognitive disabilities, they have motor functionality disabilities. It's really about making sure that everybody can understand that content and then act on that content too. So if you have some sort of call to action, anybody can follow that call to action and do what they need to do successfully, regardless of whatever abilities they happen to have. So that's how I kind of think about it. The way that's really implemented throughout email marketing takes a lot of different forms. So there's definitely people tend to think about accessibility as a coding issue. So there's things you can do on the coding side to make your emails more accessible, and that's usually through people that use some sort of assistive technology like a screen reader program. They might not be sighted, they could be blind, and they need that assistive technology to actually read out loud that email so that they can understand it. So if you're using like all image based emails, then that usually doesn't work that well because there's not a lot of content to actually read out. Those screen readers will just say, this is an image, give you the image file name, and if there's a link associated with it. So using like alternative text on your images is great. Using live, like real HTML for all of your text is even better. Doing things like, adding the ARIA role of presentation to all of your tables, so that screen readers won't read those tables out loud is a great fix. But there's a lot of other things that go in accessibility too, which comes through in like the design of things, making sure, there's high enough contrast, like color contrast. So people with, vision disabilities or they might be colorblind, can still read that content. Even through writing, just copywriting and strategy, using shorter sentences, shorter emails, not using a lot of jargon and slang terms and stuff like that is a great way to make your emails more accessible. But it all comes back to the fact that you need anybody to be able to consume your email campaign and then act upon it, regardless of whatever abilities they happen to have.
The way I see it from the points that you stated is that it's about making email more inclusive and thoughtful.
Yep.
Not looking at people just as, calling them as mailing lists or, looking at them more of a demographic or a segment-based view, but looking at them as humans and like making sure that your emails would definitely matter to them because they are the ones who are reading.
Yeah, I think that's really important everybody is a human, everybody's a person. And recognizing that is really, really important, especially because when we talk about accessibility and inclusion, people tend to think of major disabilities as like what you're coding and writing for. So people that are blind, people that have hearing disabilities, like that's what people tend to think of when they start talking about accessibility. But there's this idea of like an ability spectrum, like we're all only temporarily able-bodied. So even if you're not permanently blind, you could, have an eye infection that impairs your sight. You could have just gone to the eye doctor and had your pupils dilated, which will affect your sight. For like motor disabilities, you might not be missing both of your arms, but you could be holding your newborn baby in one arm and trying to accomplish some task. You could have a broken arm or a broken hand that limits your ability to interact with screens or your computer mouse or something like that. So at some point in your life, everybody's going to be disabled to some extent. It might be permanent, it might be temporary, but just recognizing that you might be consider yourself able-bodied and without any disabilities currently, but you can't just think that's always going to be the case for everybody, and trying to balance that with your writing, design, and coding in your email campaigns, and make sure that you are making these more human, accessible, inclusive experiences for people.
Yes, that was a wonderful example when you stated, it's not about classifying people as those with disabilities, because all of us at some point in time would go through the same. We would momentarily be not able to access something when we're reading an email. Like say we're in the bus and reading an email and it has a video and we don't have headphones. Come on, none of us can just play it on loud and listen to it. So yes, that makes total sense to make the email matter to everybody, whether or not it's going to be permanent or temporary disablement and not able to access at that point in time. And this is going to be one of our wrap-up questions. Let's assume that you are developing an email marketing crash course. So what are your 5 must-learn lessons and why?
Yeah, so I do a lot of kind of email marketing, especially design development crash courses for people.
Yeah, that's a relevant question to you then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I feel like, though, over time, I feel like I've been less interested in the design and development side of things, because I feel like at some point that's kind of a solved problem. Like, even if you're not a coder, you can find good templates, or your email service provider has templates that you can use, and you can find imagery and graphics fairly easily, or you're working with a team that can develop them. So I think it's less about the design development side of things. So the things I would focus on, the lessons, are really around the basic kind of mechanics of email marketing, what email marketing is, what the goals are of email marketing, how you actually, go through the process of creating an email and getting it out the door and learning from it, I think is one of the key things. So just understanding at a foundational level of what email marketing is, what it's good for, what it's not good for, is one of those key lessons. I think more and more, one of the lessons that we're trying to teach people about is just around consent and privacy. We've seen a lot of legislation introduced over the last few years. CAN spam has been around forever in the US. But then we have Castle in Canada. We have GDPR that everybody's kind of contending with. And understanding that legislation and how it informs how you collect consent from subscribers when they're signing up for your emails, and then how you keep that data private, is really, really important. It's going to be more and more important over the coming years. So that would be one of those kind of key lessons, is understanding legislation and consent and privacy. Accessibility and inclusion is super important, and we kind of talk about that a little bit, but that would be one of my key lessons as well. And then I think the last 2 are really around writing effective copy, keeping things short and succinct, straight to the point, getting rid of jargon, having this human feeling as opposed to just using a lot of business speak. Just writing strategy is really, really important. And then around reporting, making sure you're tracking the things that are really important in your marketing program, and using that data to learn and improve future campaigns. So I think, the foundations of email, consent and privacy, accessibility and inclusion, writing, and then reporting are my 5 top lessons these days.
Awesome. So you've also done my job of summarizing the whole thing. Yeah, I love the way you stated privacy, because that is so important. I can't stress enough on that fact, because there are a lot of legislations and regulations, as you stated, like GDPR, Californian Consumer Privacy Act, CASL. There are a lot. So it's important that marketers understand how they deal with their customers' data and how careful they should be in processing the data and being extra careful when they are using a lot of channels through which this data is parsed. So yeah, very true. And that's a very, very solid foundation, I should say. Now I'm going to have a very, very interesting concluding session for this talk, and that's going to have a quick rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you do not have to think much. Just give me straight off answers to those questions.
I'll try my best.
All right, here you go. Favorite pastime second only to podcasting?
Definitely making music. So I play guitar, bass.
Wow.
Lots of stringed instruments. So when I'm not doing email related stuff, I'm either hanging out with my family or making music of some sort.
Awesome. Great. So one thing you regularly do in your tea or coffee break?
So either checking on my 2 daughters and my wife, seeing how they're doing, especially as we're amidst this global pandemic. But when I'm not doing that, then probably playing some Animal Crossing on my Nintendo Switch, checking turnip prices.
That's nice. That's so cute. All right, the last one. A person you've always wanted to host on your show, but you have not still.
Yeah, this was a tough one to think about. I would generally say that there's not one person. I was going to say there's not one person. I really just like talking to people that are doing interesting things in email. But one of my favorite newsletters is called Next Draft by this guy named Dave Pell. And I think he's an excellent writer, and it's short, it's concise, it's really funny.
Oh, yes.
So I think I'd love to talk to him about, and he's been doing it for a really long time, his newsletters, his business. So just chat with him about how he does what he does, and how that's grown over the years, and especially digging into his kind of comedy and writing skills.
So I think he's doing an amazing job with copywriting. And I hope you see the light of the day when you actually host him on your show. And I'm going to be one of the listeners.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time to share your experiences and thoughts, Jason. I thoroughly enjoyed the talk. And, I'm sure listeners would also take away important email lessons like caring about customers, being inclusive in their approach, being accessible with emails, and finally, making email campaigns matter a lot. So wishing you all the very best, Jason.
Thanks. You too. I appreciate it. And it was a lot of fun talking to you.
Thank you so much. And it's a happy wrap to all the listeners. To know more of such informative email marketing stories, check out Zoho Campaigns Expert Diaries on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple Podcasts. Until our next episode, stay tuned.